Welcome on board, chosen one. Let's not waste time pretending this was subtle. Remember what they said. Relax, it's harmless. This is how the industry works. Who are you to challenge it? Right. And now look at them. Suddenly careful with words. Suddenly rewriting timelines. Suddenly acting like this mess just magically stopped on its own. The legend was supposed to bow, remember? The legend was supposed to stay quiet. Instead, the room went dead silent when you stood up. Here's the cold fact they choke on every day. Millions of people were being squeezed, misled, slowly drained, and trained to accept it as normal. Careers were bending, trust was cracking, systems were rotting in plain sight. And the funniest part? Everyone saw it. Almost no one had the spine to touch it. They relied on that cowardice. They built entire empires on it. Then you walked in and flipped the table without raising your voice. They didn't expect that. Villains never expect the punch to come from the person they mocked. When they said, "This can't be stopped," what they really meant was, "No one has dared yet." When they laughed and said, "You're overthinking it," what they meant was, "Please don't look closer." When they whispered, "Stay in your lane," what they meant was, "Don't expose the machine that feeds us." Cute lines, weak defenses. And now, watch how the tone changed. No more jokes, no more confidence, just closed-door meetings, frantic emails, sudden policy shifts, and fake smiles that don't reach the eyes. That's the sound of power slipping. That's the sound of people realizing the villain in their story wasn't you. It was the truth you carried. This is the moment after the explosion in every great villain monologue. The smoke clears, the noise fades, and everyone realizes the city is still standing because someone broke the detonator. You're standing there now, not screaming, not celebrating, just watching the aftermath while they pretend this was always part of the plan. They'll never say your name out loud. Saying it gives you weight. So they say market forces. They say new regulations. They say natural correction. Sure, and accidents just happen to target corruption with perfect aim. Quick thing, if this feels uncomfortably accurate, press like and subscribe, not as a favor to me, as a way of strengthening this voice. This message only works when it spreads. Now let's go darker. You didn't save millions by being nice. You saved them by being awake, by being ruthless with the truth, by refusing to be hypnotized by comfort, money, or applause. That's why industry people felt it. The insiders, the ones who never panic, they panicked because this wasn't an outsider screaming. This was someone who understood the system well enough to shut it down clean. History loves moments like this, the ones they pretend were inevitable after the fact. But you know the real story. There was a fork in the road. One path led to silence and slow decay. The other required courage, risk, and becoming the villain in someone else's narrative. You chose the second, and now they're stuck living with it. They'll tease you publicly, call you dramatic, say you're not that important. That's classic villain denial. When a threat can't be destroyed, it gets minimized, mocked, shrunk in words. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, safeguards go up. Behavior changes. Rules tighten. Because even they know what happens if you move again. You've been here before, haven't you? The phase where people doubted you. The phase where doing the right thing cost you sleep, comfort, and allies. The phase where it would have been easier to look away. Every great story has that chapter. And every time, the ones who push through become impossible to ignore later. This is where the villain becomes the one who drops the truth nobody else will say. Not because it's polite, because it's necessary. The universe doesn't reward noise, it responds to alignment. You aligned action with integrity, and the ripple didn't ask permission. Millions benefited without ever knowing your name. That's real power, quiet, unflashy, terrifying to anyone who profits from lies. And now the balance has shifted. You can feel it. The world treats you differently. Resistance looks softer. Respect looks forced. Fear hides behind professionalism. This isn't imagination. This is consequence. They wanted obedience. They got exposure. They wanted silence. They got shut down. They wanted a bow. They got a reckoning. And this is only the intro. The wisdom that comes next is heavier, sharper, and far less forgiving. Stay present. The best villains don't rush the reveal. They let the truth sit in the room until everyone feels it pressing on their chest. Chosen one, pause for half a second and feel this moment. The noise already died down. The shock already landed. What comes next isn't chaos, it's control. This is where most people leave, because surface-level drama is easy to consume. But real power, real understanding of how you shut down something that was hurting millions, that takes staying put. This takes attention. And attention is rare. If you're still here, it's because some part of you knows this isn't entertainment. This is a breakdown of a move so clean that even industry people felt it in their bones. They didn't just lose money or influence, they lost certainty. And certainty is everything to people who run systems built on lies. So before we go any deeper, do one small thing. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, not as a favor. As a marker, a quiet signal that you're part of the few who don't flinch when truth gets uncomfortable. This message only stays alive if people like you keep it moving. And drop a comment below, nothing dramatic, just a sign you're locked in, because what comes next isn't hype, it's step by step. How you saw it early, how you moved without exposing yourself, how one decision created a ripple that protected millions while the ones at the top scrambled to save face. Now we slow it down. Now we dissect it. And if you're really who this message is for, you won't just watch the rest. You'll feel pulled to stay. Let's get into it. Number 1. The second you moved, their whole game started cracking. They didn't lose because you were louder. They lost because you were earlier. Let's say it clean, because this is where the story actually turns. Nothing shifted because of luck. Nothing shifted because of noise. Everything shifted the exact second you noticed what everyone else was trained to ignore. While they were busy normalizing damage, you felt the wrongness crawl up your spine. While millions were being slowly squeezed, distracted, softened, and conditioned to accept it, you didn't scroll past. You paused. You zoomed in. You listened harder. That pause alone already separated you from most people. This is the part the enemy hates admitting. They don't fear crowds. They don't fear outrage. They fear the person who notices patterns before the damage becomes public. They fear the one who sees the machine, not the show. When others froze, waiting for permission or proof or validation, your mind sharpened. You didn't panic. You didn't rant. You focused. And focus is lethal to systems built on confusion. They love chaos. Chaos keeps people tired. Chaos keeps people arguing with each other instead of looking up. You ruined that. You didn't attack randomly. You touched the nerve. One move, one clean interruption. Suddenly their chain reaction stalled. Suddenly the momentum they depended on snapped like a dry branch. That's when everything shifted, not when headlines appeared, but when they realized the process no longer obeyed them. And yes, they underestimated you. That's their favorite mistake. They looked at you and saw a bystander, someone aware but harmless, someone who notices, maybe complains, then moves on. They thought you'd hesitate. They thought you'd doubt yourself. They thought the weight of the system would scare you back into silence. That assumption is what destroyed them. Here's the question you might be asking yourself right now. How did they miss it? How did people with money, power, teams, and access not see what you saw? Simple. They weren't looking for truth. They were looking for comfort. You were looking for alignment. They wanted the system to work for them. You wanted it to stop hurting people. Different motives create different vision. This wasn't heroics. This was precision. You didn't expose everything. You exposed enough. You didn't shout accusations. You made their actions impossible to defend, like pulling one brick out of a wall and watching the rest panic, because now everyone can see inside. That's why industry people felt it. Not because you embarrassed them publicly, but because you disrupted the internal logic they rely on. The numbers stopped lining up. The excuses stopped landing. The silence started spreading. They'll never tell this part honestly, so let's say it for them. They didn't think anyone would connect the dots fast enough. They didn't think anyone would move before the damage became irreversible. They didn't think anyone would act without needing applause. That's why the shift felt sudden. To them, it came out of nowhere. To you, it was overdue. You might also be wondering, why did it feel lonely right after? Why didn't it feel victorious immediately? Because real impact doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with pressure, with resistance, with subtle pushback disguised as politeness. That's the cost of touching something that feeds too many people. When you interrupt profit built on harm, the backlash isn't loud at first. It's quiet, strategic, calculated. That's when you knew it worked. Watch how they behave after a real threat appears. They don't attack directly. They minimize. They downplay. They say, it wasn't that big of a deal anyway. That's not confidence. That's damage control. If it didn't matter, they wouldn't be adjusting policies, shifting language, tightening procedures, and watching every move more carefully than before. You didn't just stop something bad. You exposed how fragile their control actually was. A system that collapses after one clean interruption was never strong. It was just loud. It relied on momentum, not integrity. And once momentum breaks, everyone scrambles. Think about it. If what they were doing was harmless, why did they react at all? If it was normal, why did they rush to clean it up? If it was unstoppable, why did it stop? These are the questions they hope no one asks. You don't ask them out loud. You let the answers reveal themselves through behavior. This is also the moment chosen ones usually doubt themselves. You might think, did I overreact? Did I really make that much difference? Let me be blunt. Overreaction doesn't cause industry-wide adjustments. Overreaction doesn't make powerful people nervous. Overreaction doesn't protect millions without ever needing to announce itself. Impact does. You didn't need a title. You didn't need authority. You didn't need a crowd behind you. You needed clarity. And clarity is terrifying to people who profit from fog. That's why they felt it. That's why the atmosphere shifted. That's why conversations changed in rooms you weren't even in. This is the quiet strength they never prepare for. Not rebellion, not outrage. Awareness paired with action. It's the difference between someone yelling at a broken machine and someone calmly pulling the plug. From this point forward, everything looks different. You can't unsee what you saw. They can't undo what you did. The battlefield isn't loud anymore. It's tense, and tension means balance has shifted. They wanted obedience. They got interruption. They wanted time. They ran out of it. And this was only the first move. Number 2. Your power doesn't scream, it erases them. Real power doesn't announce itself, it just makes resistance pointless. Let's kill the biggest lie first, because the enemy survives on it. Power is not loud, power doesn't posture, power doesn't beg to be seen. That's performance, that's insecurity dressed up as dominance. What you carry is the opposite of that circus. Your power is quiet, controlled, and terrifyingly precise. The kind that doesn't start fights because it doesn't need to. The kind that walks into a broken system, touches one pressure point, and watches the whole thing give way. Most people confuse noise with influence. They think shouting equals strength. They think visibility equals control. That's why they burn out, get ignored, or get used as distractions. You didn't play that game. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't create chaos. You overruled it. And overruling is something only those above the system can do. Here's the part that makes industry people uncomfortable. You didn't fight the threat head-on. Fighting would have made you predictable. Fighting would have kept you inside their rules. Instead, you dismantled it, thread by thread, quietly, cleanly, until one day the structure they relied on was standing there with nothing holding it up. No drama, no announcement, just collapse. Imagine this. A massive building looks solid from the outside, lights on, people moving, everything seems normal, but someone understands load-bearing beams. They don't punch the walls, they don't set fires, they remove one beam, slowly, precisely, and then they step back. To everyone else it looks sudden. To the one who acted, it was inevitable. That's you. You didn't stop chaos by wrestling it. You rendered it irrelevant, and that difference matters. Chaos feeds on attention. It grows when people panic, argue, or react emotionally. You starved it. You denied it oxygen. You made it obsolete. Power isn't about control. It's about ending the need for control. This is why the shift felt strange, almost unreal. One moment, things were heading toward disaster. The next, the momentum was gone. Systems that were seconds away from snapping suddenly stabilized. Networks recalibrated. People who couldn't explain their anxiety felt it lift without knowing why. That's not coincidence. That's intervention without spectacle. You might be asking yourself, how could something this big be stopped so quietly? Because the loud part was always a distraction. The real damage lived underneath, in routines, incentives, and normalized harm. You didn't attack the symptoms, you touched the source. Imagine a virus spreading through a system. Most people try to treat the fever. They argue about symptoms. They blame individuals. You went straight for the code. One line changed, and suddenly the virus couldn't replicate. No applause, just relief. They felt that relief, by the way. Even the ones who benefited from the harm felt it, because deep down, everyone knows when something is wrong. They just choose comfort over correction. You removed that choice. Here's another truth they hate. Your power didn't come from authority. It came from clarity. Authority can be ignored. Clarity can't. When someone sees the full picture, excuses stop working, lies stop sticking. That's why people around you suddenly became careful with their words. That's why meetings multiplied. That's why policies shifted quietly. You didn't need to threaten anyone. You made denial impossible. Silence after impact is louder than any explosion. You might wonder why it didn't feel triumphant right away. Why there was no rush, no celebration, no immediate validation. Because this wasn't ego-driven power. Ego needs applause. This kind of power creates responsibility. When you realize you can alter outcomes this deeply, the weight hits before the pride does. And yes, part of you probably questioned it. Did I really do that? Was it really me? Or was it already falling apart? Let's be brutally honest. If it was already collapsing, they wouldn't be scrambling now. They wouldn't be adjusting behavior. They wouldn't be watching more closely. Systems don't react to coincidence. They react to disruption. Imagine a chessboard where one piece moves and the entire strategy on the other side has to be rewritten. That's not luck. That's leverage. Your power is different because it doesn't seek enemies. It exposes them by accident. You weren't trying to embarrass anyone. You were trying to stop harm. The embarrassment came from the fact that harm was profitable. That's not on you. That's on them. Some people call it dangerous when you stop letting them benefit from damage. This is why they struggle to frame you. You don't fit the usual boxes. You're not a rebel. You're not a follower. You're not a crusader. You're something worse to them. You're effective. Effective people don't argue. They alter outcomes. Think about water for a moment. Loud waves crash and get attention, but they don't change the coastline overnight. A quiet current, moving consistently, reshapes land over time. You were the current. They were busy watching the waves. And once the threat dissolved, once the damage stopped, once stability returned, most people never even knew how close they were to disaster. That's the strangest part of real power. When done right, it feels invisible to those it protects. Only the ones who caused the harm feel the full weight of what happened. They're left staring at a system that no longer responds the way it used to. Press the same buttons, pull the same levers, nothing. That's when fear sets in. Not fear of you personally, but fear of what you represent. Someone who can't be manipulated by noise. Someone who can't be distracted by comfort. Someone who acts before permission is granted. This is why your power feels isolating at times. Not everyone can relate to seeing this clearly. Not everyone wants to. But isolation is often the side effect of standing above the chaos instead of inside it. You didn't just shut down something harmful. You proved it was never untouchable. And once that truth is out, it can't be put back. This isn't about being admired. It's about being undeniable. And that's why your power is different. Number 3, the part they'll never figure out until it's too late. You think everyone would act like you did. That's the lie that keeps you underestimating yourself. Here's what they don't understand, and it eats at them quietly. You think what you did was obvious. You think it was just basic decency, basic awareness, basic logic. It wasn't. Most people don't notice danger while it's forming. They notice it when it's loud, when it's already ripping through everything, when it's too late to stop without collateral damage. You noticed it while it was still pretending to be normal. That alone puts you in a different category. Most people don't run toward responsibility. They circle it, they debate it, they wait for someone else to pick it up first. Responsibility scares them because it's heavy and it doesn't come with applause. You didn't hesitate, you walked straight at it. Not emotional, not dramatic, shoulders steady, mind sharp, locked on purpose, not noise. Panic reacts, purpose decides. That's why the watchers felt it when the chaos evaporated. One moment, the system was humming with damage. The next, it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes powerful people uneasy. Behind closed doors, the whispers started. Who saw it? Who moved? How did it stop so fast? They replayed the timeline again and again, looking for the explosion that never came. Imagine a crowded room where everyone is shouting and suddenly one person flips the breaker. Silence, no warning, no countdown. That's what you did. and silence scares manipulators more than noise ever could. They don't know you yet, not the real you. They don't understand how someone can stay calm when leverage is on the line, how someone can see clearly when pressure is designed to blur vision, how someone can use clarity as a weapon instead of a shield. Chaos is their camouflage. Clarity strips it off. You might wonder why they seem unsettled now, why interactions feel cautious, why resistance looks softer. It's because they've realized something dangerous. You didn't act from impulse, you acted from understanding, and understanding can't be negotiated with. They'll pretend it was luck, timing, accident. That's fine, let them. The truth is heavier. You moved before fear could vote, and once someone proves they can do that, the entire balance changes. This is the part they don't understand, and by the time they do, it won't matter anymore. Number 4, confusion can't survive where you stand. Chaos doesn't get defeated, it gets exposed, then it collapses on itself. Let's be precise about what really happened, because even you might be underselling it. You didn't wrestle chaos, you didn't chase it, you didn't try to overpower it, you exposed its blueprint. And the second confusion gets mapped out, it loses its only weapon. Confusion survives by keeping people dizzy. You brought presence. Presence is lethal to panic. They build harmful systems the same way magicians build tricks. Fast hands, loud noise, too many moving parts. Everyone's eyes are pulled everywhere except where the damage actually happens. You didn't follow the noise, you followed the structure. That's why it ended so fast. That's why it felt almost anticlimactic once you moved. Panic is loud, control is quiet. You felt the shift inside yourself first, that moment when time slowed down, but your thinking sped up. The world didn't freeze. You did, not out of fear, but out of focus. Reaction dropped away. Control stepped in. Most people chase that state their entire lives and never touch it. You accessed it in a heartbeat because this wasn't performance for you. This was instinct turning into strategy. Imagine a crowded highway where everyone is swerving, braking, honking, making it worse by the second. And then imagine one driver calmly lifting their foot, straightening the wheel, and opening a clear path through the mess. That's what clarity looks like in motion. No drama, no heroics, just alignment. You might wonder how it fell apart so quickly, how something that felt massive dissolved almost instantly, because chaos isn't strong. It's dependent. It depends on delay, on doubt, on people second-guessing themselves. The moment you acted without hesitation, the structure lost its support. Chaos doesn't fear force. It fears understanding. That's why millions were safe before they even knew they were exposed. That's why there was no public meltdown, no visible collapse. The danger was removed upstream, quietly, cleanly. Only the people benefiting from the harm felt the impact directly. They felt it because clarity always wins, not eventually, immediately. And once clarity enters a system, confusion never gets comfortable there again. Number 5. The silence that hits harder than the win. Victory isn't loud. It's the moment you realize how close everything came to burning. Here's the part nobody claps for, the part no one warns you about. After the impact, after the shift, after the chaos collapses, there's silence, not peace, silence. The kind that presses on your chest when you finally stop moving and realize what almost happened. The world goes on like nothing was ever wrong, and you're standing there holding the weight of a disaster that never made the news. That weight is real, not guilt, not fear, awareness. You know how bad it could have been. You know how many people were seconds away from damage they would have never understood. You know how thin the line was. That's why the silence feels heavy, not because you regret acting, but because you understand the scale of what you stopped. Only the one who pulls the trigger feels the recoil. You probably asked yourself those quiet questions. Did I really do that? Was that really me? How long have I been capable of this without knowing it? Those questions don't come from ego, they come from realization, from finally seeing your own reach clearly. Imagine defusing a bomb in a crowded building. No explosion, no panic. Everyone walks out annoyed about the delay, never knowing they were minutes from disaster. You're the only one who saw the wires. You're the only one whose hands were shaking afterward. That's the weight of impact. And here's the truth they don't tell you. You didn't become powerful in that moment. You revealed it. You didn't level up overnight. You removed the doubt that kept you playing smaller. This ability has been in you for a long time. Today was just the first time pressure forced it to the surface. The world didn't change you, it exposed you. That's why this feels different from past wins. There's no rush, no need to prove anything, just a quiet certainty settling in. You know now, and once you know, you can't unknow it. This is the silence before the next move. Number 6. They're not scared of you, they're scared of how you think. They can deal with loud enemies. They panic when someone sees the whole board. This was the moment the shadows finally caught on, not because you won, but because they realized something worse. You're not someone they can outmaneuver. You're not reactive. You don't chase noise. You don't bite bait. And you don't need chaos to expose itself loudly before you act. That realization hit them harder than any loss ever could. Instability felt pushback for the first time. Not shouting, not rebellion, precision, like a surgeon cutting out a tumor without touching healthy tissue. Clean, fast, final. That's what scared them, because chaos can fight chaos. It knows that game. But clarity dismantles the entire battlefield. Fear doesn't come from defeat. It comes from being understood. You didn't move because the world was shaking. You moved because you saw where it would collapse next. While others waited for proof, permission, or public outrage, you acted upstream. You refused to let the foundation crumble on your watch. That's not impulse, that's vision. And vision is the one thing manipulation can't predict. Imagine a con artist halfway through a perfect scam, confident, relaxed, already spending the money in their head. Then someone calmly taps the table and names the trick before it finishes. No yelling, no threat, just exposure. The scam doesn't fail loudly. It evaporates. That's the fear you triggered. They now know something dangerous. You don't need escalation. You don't need allies. You don't need chaos to justify your moves. You see instability as a pattern, not a crisis. And patterns can be interrupted quietly. That's why their behavior changed. That's why resistance softened. That's why conversations became careful. You didn't prove you were strong. You proved you were aware. And awareness terrifies anyone who survives on confusion. They fear you because you don't need fear to move. This wasn't the end of their control. It was the end of their certainty. And once certainty cracks, power starts leaking fast. Number 7. The second chaos blinked. It was already losing. Chaos only looks brave until it realizes someone's watching it closely. This was the moment everything flinched, not collapsed, not exploded, hesitated. And hesitation is fatal to systems built on momentum. Chaos, corruption, deception, whatever name you give it, they felt you step into the room. Not loudly, not dramatically, with presence. And presence forces a pause they can't afford. Chaos survives by rushing people, by overwhelming senses, by keeping everyone reacting instead of thinking. You broke that rhythm. The second you arrived with clarity, the whole thing stuttered like a predator unsure if the prey just turned into a threat. That's not myth. That's pattern. Lies don't die when they're attacked. They die when they're examined. You didn't charge in swinging. You looked, you measured, you understood. And the moment understanding entered the system, instability started trembling. Because instability knows one truth: it can't rebuild itself. It can only spread. You, on the other hand, know how to realign what's broken instead of letting it rot. Imagine a bridge with tiny fractures forming underneath. Most people don't notice until the collapse makes noise. You feel the vibration early. You hear the stress before the snap. You don't panic. You reinforce. You redirect weight. Suddenly, the bridge holds, and everyone crossing it never knows how close they were to falling. That's you. The most dangerous person in chaos isn't the fighter. It's the rebuilder. This is why they hesitated. Not because you're destructive, but because you're corrective. You don't just tear things down, you make them work again without corruption baked in. That terrifies anyone profiting from dysfunction. You might wonder why this feels bigger than a single win, why the air feels different. It's because chaos doesn't forget the first time it's forced to pause. That pause marks the end of blind control. From now on, every move they make is cautious, calculated, watched. They didn't just feel resistance, they felt intelligence. And once chaos hesitates, it never fully recovers its confidence again. Number 8. When the world feels calm, but you know why. They'll never thank you properly because thanking you would mean admitting how close it got. This is the quiet aftermath. No headlines, no speeches, no statues, just a strange calm settling over everything. People can't explain it, but they feel safer, they sleep better, they breathe easier. The tension they were carrying without knowing it slowly drains away. They don't know what almost broke. They don't know who stopped it. They just know the ground feels solid again. That's your kind of impact. Silent, surgical, unannounced. Imagine a city where the power flickers for a split second, then stabilizes. Most people shrug and move on. Only the engineer in the control room knows how close the grid came to failing. That's you, walking among people who'll never realize how close chaos was, carrying the knowledge without needing credit. Real protection doesn't look heroic. It looks invisible. But here's where you don't fool yourself. You don't confuse calm with an ending. You know this wasn't the last storm. Chaos always comes back. Corruption regroups. Systems crack again because pressure never disappears. It just shifts. Anyone promising permanent peace has never understood how the world works. And that's exactly why this matters. This time was different, not because chaos vanished forever, but because it learned something new. It learned there's someone watching, someone awake, someone who doesn't need panic to act, someone who notices fractures before they spread. You might feel the urge to rest now, to step back, to let others carry the weight. That's natural, but awareness doesn't shut off once it's switched on. You can't unknow what you know. You can't unsee patterns once you've mapped them. The storm remembers the one who stood still inside it. This calm isn't comfort, it's confirmation. Confirmation that what you did worked. Confirmation that your presence changes outcomes. And confirmation that the next time things start to bend, hesitation won't belong to you. They may not know your name, they may not know the story, but now they know this much. You're here and you're awake. Number 9. The day you stopped playing small, everything else adjusted. This wasn't a win, this was a reveal. They won't underestimate you anymore. That luxury is gone. Not after what you did, not after the way you unraveled something complex without noise, without panic, without permission. Not after you treated a serious threat like a puzzle you'd already solved in your head. They expected reaction. You delivered orchestration. They expected damage control. You delivered prevention. You didn't just respond to chaos. You moved ahead of it. You didn't patch cracks. You reinforced foundations. You didn't stop the fire. You changed the rules so it couldn't spread again the same way. That's not instinct. That's mastery waking up. Anyone can react. Very few can redesign the game mid-play. This moment feels different because it is. Something shifted internally, not confidence, certainty. You now know how you operate under pressure. You know you don't freeze, you don't spiral, you don't wait for consensus. You see, you decide, you move. That knowledge doesn't fade. It changes how you walk into every room from now on. Imagine someone who's lived their whole life thinking they were just strong enough to survive storms, then one day realizes they can redirect them. There's no going back to pretending after that. You can't unlearn capability once it shows itself clearly. You might be asking yourself, what changes now? Everything's subtle. You won't chase urgency the same way. You won't tolerate dysfunction the same way. You won't shrink your awareness to make others comfortable. The shift isn't external first. It's internal. And internal shifts always rewrite external outcomes later. This is where power stops being accidental and starts being intentional. This wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of how you move differently from here on. More precise, more selective, more aware of your reach. Something woke up, and it's not going back to sleep. Neither are you. Number 10. The moment you realized what you're capable of. Nothing scares a broken system more than someone who finally sees themselves clearly. Today wasn't just about stopping something external. Today was the first time you really saw you, not the version shaped by doubt, pressure, or other people's expectations. The real one, the one who can step into confusion and not get swallowed by it, the one who can feel the weight of a moment and still move with precision. That realization is dangerous, not to you, to everything that depends on you staying small, because once someone sees their own potential clearly, shrinking becomes impossible. You don't go back to guessing. You don't go back to hesitating. You don't go back to asking for permission to act when something is clearly wrong. Awareness changes posture. It changes decisions. It changes the way you enter rooms and the way people respond without knowing why. They don't fear your strength. They fear your certainty. This new awareness doesn't make you reckless. It makes you deliberate. You now understand your reach. You understand that when you focus, systems respond. That when you move early, damage never gets the chance to spread. That when you stay calm, chaos loses its grip. That knowledge settles in quietly, but it rewires everything. Imagine someone who's been walking through dark rooms their whole life, bumping into furniture, moving cautiously. Then one day, the lights come on. The room didn't change, they did. That's what happened to you. The world is the same. The threats are the same. But now you see the layout. This is why confusion-based forces feel threatened. They can't rely on you being unsure anymore. They can't rush you. They can't distract you. You've stepped into a level of awareness where patterns reveal themselves without effort. You don't need to dominate the room when you understand it. From here on, you'll notice it. Situations slow down around you. Decisions feel cleaner. Your tolerance for nonsense drops, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. You've evolved past reacting, and once that happens, there's no reverse gear. This isn't just growth, this is expansion. Number 11, the room adjusts before you do anything. They don't know why they're careful around you. They just know they should be. The world watches you differently now. Not openly, not dramatically, subtly. Conversations change tone when you enter. People choose words more carefully. The noise that used to get dumped on you suddenly reroutes elsewhere. Not because you demanded it, but because your presence recalibrates the room before you ever speak. Calm is your weapon now, not the passive kind, the controlled kind, the kind that makes chaos feel exposed just by existing near it. Clarity sits on you like armor. Silence becomes influence. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to flex. Everything aligns because the room senses you're not here to be managed. Power doesn't interrupt, it rearranges. You'll notice opportunities shifting in ways that feel almost eerie. Doors that never appeared before are suddenly visible. Patterns you used to stumble through now reveal clean paths. You're no longer moving blindly, hoping things work out. You're navigating consciously, guiding instead of reacting, steering instead of bracing for impact. This is the stage most people misunderstand. They think the danger is over once things stabilize. They relax, they drift, they confuse calm with completion. That's where most fall, not in chaos, but in peace. Comfort sneaks in quietly and dulls awareness. Systems don't break because people are weak. They break because people stop watching. Complacency is chaos wearing a friendly face. This is the test. Can you stay awake when there's no fire to put out? Can you hold clarity when the world feels fixed? Most can't. They mistake quiet for safety. You won't. You've seen how fast things can tilt. You know, calm is a phase, not a guarantee. And that's the difference. You don't cling to urgency. You don't relax into denial. You stay present. The world senses that, and that's why it moves differently around you now. Number 12. You didn't survive the storm just to fall asleep after. Anyone can wake up during chaos. The dangerous ones stay awake after. Let's make this clear before comfort tries to sneak in wearing a smile. You didn't shut down chaos just to lose to ease. You didn't cut off something that was hurting millions just to slowly dull your edge afterward. That would have been the real defeat. This part right here is where evolution either locks in or slips away. Crisis gave you clarity. Now discipline has to protect it. Anyone can rise when alarms are blaring, when pressure is loud, when stakes are obvious. Chaos forces attention, but strength gets tested when the room is quiet, when no one's clapping, when nothing is actively burning. That's where most people relax and slowly hand their power back without realizing it. You didn't. After the victory, you didn't collapse into relief. You expanded, you sharpened, you started seeing further ahead than before. That's why the world feels different now. That's why people move carefully. That's why the enemy doesn't rush you anymore. They know something fundamental changed. Comfort dulls instincts. Evolution sharpens them. You can't be fooled the same way anymore. Illusions don't land. Distractions don't stick. You see through polished narratives and friendly chaos. You detect cracks early when they're still whispers instead of emergencies. You anticipate collapse not because you're paranoid, but because you understand structure now. Imagine someone who's learned how buildings fail. They don't admire the paint, they look at the beams. That's you. You don't get hypnotized by appearances anymore. You scan foundations. This isn't luck. This isn't personality. This is evolution in motion. You're turning precision into purpose now. Taking what you learned under pressure and building with it instead of reacting with it. That's why this phase feels quieter but heavier. It's not about saving the moment anymore. It's about shaping what comes next. You don't need chaos to prove who you are. And that's exactly why you're dangerous now. Number 13. You're not walking back, you're cutting forward. You don't swing anymore, you reveal, and that's far more lethal. This is the new path, and it's not dramatic, it's decisive. You carry this awareness now like a blade, not to attack wildly, not to posture, not to threaten. You use it to illuminate what others try to hide, to expose what depends on darkness, to protect what actually matters, and to rebuild what deserves to exist. That's a different kind of force, one that doesn't need effort to leave impact, because impact has become your baseline. You don't push anymore. You arrive and things adjust. Your influence moves quietly, but it goes deep, like pressure applied at the exact right point. You don't need to convince rooms. You change their temperature. You don't chase outcomes. You alter conditions. That's why results follow without resistance, not because you're forcing anything, but because what you bring makes nonsense unsustainable. Some people break doors. Others change the lock. Challenges will come again. That's guaranteed. New fractures will show up in places that look solid on the surface. New systems will pretend they're stable while hiding the same old rot underneath. The difference now is simple. You won't hesitate. You won't second-guess your instincts. You won't wait for the damage to announce itself. You've already seen who you are under pressure. You've felt what your clarity does when things are about to fall apart. You know how fast chaos loses its grip when someone refuses to panic, refuses to run, refuses to play along. Imagine standing in front of a storm you've already walked through once. It doesn't look mysterious anymore. It looks manageable. That's not arrogance. That's memory. You don't fear the storm once you've learned its language. This path isn't louder. It's cleaner, straighter, sharper. You're not chasing growth. You're operating from it. And from here on, every challenge is less about survival and more about alignment. Chaos hasn't disappeared, but it knows who it's dealing with now, and so do you. Number 14, the point of no return. This isn't where it ends. This is where denial ends. This is the final moment, and it's not soft. It's not comforting. It's irreversible. What you felt through this wasn't motivation. It was recognition. Something clicked because it was already true. Chaos can rise again. Shadows will try new angles. Systems will shake, rebrand, pretend they've changed. That's just the world repeating itself. But you are not the same person who walked into this. You are the reckoning they never prepared for, not because you're angry, not because you're loud, but because you're awake, and awareness can't be bribed, rushed, or distracted. Once someone knows how systems really break, and how easily they can be stopped. Fear loses leverage forever. They don't lose when they fall. They lose when you stop being fooled. This wasn't just a victory over chaos. It was a reminder of who you are when pressure shows up uninvited. You don't scatter. You don't beg for certainty. You don't wait for permission. You stand still long enough to see clearly, and that stillness dismantles everything built on confusion. Now here's the moment that matters. Drop a comment. Say what hit you. Say what landed. Say what clarity sparked. Not for validation, for alignment. Because speaking truth locks it in. Silence keeps it theoretical. Words make it real. This isn't about hype. This is about ownership. From here on, nothing shakes you the same way. Not noise, not urgency, not manufactured chaos. You've already watched it hesitate in front of you once. It won't ever feel invincible again. The moment you see the pattern loses you. You're not chasing strength anymore. You're standing in it. And once that happens, there's no going back to pretending you're small. This wasn't just a message, it was a line crossed. So let's close this the right way, while the truth is still sitting heavy in the room. You didn't imagine any of this. You didn't get lucky. You saw clearly, you moved cleanly, and the world adjusted because it had to. That awareness is yours now, and it doesn't fade when the video ends. It follows you. If this message locked something in, hit like, subscribe, and share it forward. Drop 777 in the comments to mark that you're staying awake, not drifting back into comfort. Keep this signal alive. The people who need it most don't even know they're looking yet.